Hey everybody, Brendan here. Welcome back to another Dragon Sicilian run. Today we're playing against Knight C3. So normally what I do here is Knight C6. But I think I'm going to start with G6 instead this time. And the idea of G6 is it's very unlikely we're going to be getting an Alapin. So going for the Fianchetto immediately, I don't think is going to be harmful for us. I'll go E6. Bishop E3 is a very natural way to continue. So they don't do that. But because they play D3, I'm not really worried about playing E6, despite it being a little awkward looking, potentially. I kind of want to continue on with my development with Knight C6. And there's a reason why. There's this kind of funny idea I have. But I don't want to show my cards yet by developing this knight. There's actually an advantage to not developing it immediately. So D6 here. And I'm guessing Queen D2, and that's why I didn't want to develop my knight. Because sometimes they get in this Bishop H6 stuff. Let's go A6. Looking at B5. Generally, it's better when the bishop's on G2 in these lines for this B5 Rook B8 idea. But here, it doesn't look so bad. So we're gaining space on the side of the board, which is really nice. We're very happy about that. A3. I think we're going to finally play knight to E7. Don't want to delay it too long. We could have also played bishop B7, but it's a good idea to try to get castling in soon. The reason why you would play something with a delayed knight E7 is because you're worried of bishop H6, but they haven't even played queen D2 in the first place. Don't worry about it. So that's an important factor. We could also try for D5, but it's just not really in time yet because our C5 pawn would be undefended in that case. So I'm just looking to improve my pieces. Bishop B7, maybe rook A C8. Move this knight somehow, and then maybe it's possible. Oh, that's a good pawn to take. That is a really good pawn to take. If you ever offered some material, you want to take it. I think taking this one's a bit greedy. Bishop H6, you know, the queen can get in. I think... Okay, so if we take the pawn, we're probably going to have to play b4, right? So I would actually just rather retreat and just say I'm up a pawn. I think that's enough. I think objectively it should probably be best to take, but I would rather have a bit more of a comfortable position with a clean pawn up. It is a clean pawn, mind you, so that's not really a concern. So b4, if pawn takes, then I'll probably play knight takes. I don't really see the point in playing pawn takes when we're taking away from the center. You generally want to take towards the center. So for example, next move, I could play a5, or at least try to. e5 is interesting. But e5, I think I can respond with taking here on e5. Knight takes, bishop takes, pawn takes, rook takes, I think is their idea. So let's play a5 instead. And they can take on d6, but I will take back. And everything's defended, and I can always take towards the center by playing a takes b4. And now I am threatening to take, because after knight takes, as we can see, b4 is defended still. Because we took the a pawn and not the c pawn. So bishop to f4. But now c5 is not attacked, so I can actually consider taking like this. I think I want to get rid of a few pieces first, so taking with the knight looks good. Knight takes, and then pawn takes, followed by bishop b7, queen c7. This looks extremely comfortable. Yeah, and then pawn takes here. And if they go back to e3, I actually just go queen c7 here and defend this guy. And again, take towards the center. There's very few cases where I think you should take away from the center. And I could probably count them on one hand, and they all involve some Berlin type structure where it's d takes c6, whether it's I mean, sure, the Rossalimo isn't a Berlin structure, but it kind of like explains things, I think, rather like well. Yeah, so that's one of them. A Rossalimo or a Berlin, or like any exchange, Ray Lopez positions. All of those, it does make sense to play D takes, but yeah, generally it's nice to play B takes as well. So knight to F5. So I don't want to play bishop c6 or knight c6, even though this feels good to put it on the long diagonal. That's actually not correct here, because we would actually lose contact with our c5 pawn. So knight to f5, preparing to play knight to d4 is much stronger, because after knight to d4, if they ever take it with something, we can play e takes, fix our structure, because we do have doubled pawns here. And then also it means that c5 is no longer attacked, and it'll be quite difficult to actually create an attack on the pawn. For example, knight d4, knight takes d4, pawn takes d4. Here, I think knight to d4 should be fine. They could go queen d2. And that's what I was hoping for, is that they just take, because this is much simpler. The only weakness in the position are technically these two, but it's just not really easy to attack them. You need to either get something to e5, or you need to get something on the a file, but whenever you take on a b4, I just recapture, so not really a concern there either. I like rook to e8. Here I'm just going to go e5, and this was the idea of rook to e8 as well. I didn't need to go e5, but I like this idea of e4, which I don't have to play immediately. I don't really care to take here. It just kind of ruins my structure, right? It's kind of a dream for these two pawns to come off, whereas if I trade here, they could probably pick that pawn up. For example, rook b3 and then takes. And if they do that, then I just have this pawn, and I traded these two off, right? When you look at it, which pawns do you want to trade off? Because even if you take, it's most likely that they will trade. And again, I think the answer is that you want these two traded, because then you have this as a protected pass pawn. So e4 looks probably like it's best. Yeah, let's play e4. E4, if takes, I can play bishop takes, attack the rook on b1. I can remaneuver to attack the c pawn as well, because now this will be a created weakness. One of the nice things about this position is whenever you're trying to find out what to do, you want to attack your opponent's base. And attacking an opponent's base is actually something including e4. It's not just bishop to f5, because if you play bishop to f5, it's not necessarily like you'll get anything out of it. What if I play a4 and then b3 here? That looks difficult to deal with. Kind of strange, but very annoying to look at. Like my face. Yeah, so attacking an opponent's base of a pawn chain can be to attack it with a piece. It could also be to trade it off, because then their base is actually further up the board. For example, you can count this as a base of their central pawn chain. But because of that, if we play e4 and they have to take, or they have to do something, that's going to be a concession, because then c4 is just weak. Right now c4 is not weak because it's defended by e3, but the second d3 is gone, now we have a weakness to attack. So that's one of the most important principles of strategy, which I should probably make a video on. I have like a ton of ideas. A lot of them came from you guys. Thank you for all the suggestions. I like taking on d3. I don't mind if my bishops trade. So I'll just take on d3. Takes. Takes. They take on g7. I'll just recapture. And they can't take on d3 because I have bishop to e4, which is a skewer. You see that? Bishop e4 skewers the queen and the rook behind it. so they don't take. That's very good from them. So I'm looking at queen to e5, trying to exploit the fact that they can't really play rook e1. I could play h5 instead. h5 looks like a comfortable move, actually. Let's just throw that one in. Wait, did they have bishop takes h5? Maybe queen e5 actually becomes stronger because of it. But I should have probably looked at that, even if it's a silly looking move. Okay, and now one of my ideas is to go queen e2, as well as like queen c2. So if they go queen a5 or something, then I can actually just look at trying to get in. So there's queen e4 here, funnily enough. Queen e4, the long diagonal has been opened. f3, I take it. And here, it's just checkmate, actually. So good game. Yeah, this was actually a very instructive one. So we played g6 immediately instead. So they could have gone for some sort of open and we just have a transposition, but that's not really what happened here. So whenever you see d3, it's fair to assume your opponent's going to play a closed position, and this is the only time I would recommend playing moves like e6. And the reason why you play e6 in these positions is because you are going to be faced with f4, f5. This is your opponent's best plan by far. If they don't find this, then, well, you're fine. And if they do find this, well, you're fine, actually. Like, it's just going to be fine no matter what. Because after you play e6, you're going to play knight e7, get further control. This bishop also helps control f5. And one thing you might see in these positions as well, for example, is after, let's just say knight c6, a bit of a better move order, g3, g6, bishop g2, bishop g7, d3, e6, bishop e3, d6, queen d2. One of the funny ideas here that's actually quite strong is rook b8. And the reason why rook b8 is good here is because you're getting out of the diagonal. So if you push b5, you're not like worried, because here b5, well, first off, taking is possible, but e5 is even stronger because, well, this diagonal, everything's extremely loose. If the knight wasn't hanging here, the knight takes e5 would just like win the game. And that's why rook b8 is played, because now b5, so like if knight g2, or like let's just say random move like h3, now b5, and actually, yeah, I think black is preferred here, b4, a5, a4, and you're going to try to open this diagonal for this bishop. And that's a very effective strategy. And e5 no longer works, of course, because the knight can take and there's no rook in the corner hanging. So it's a kind of a deep move, but it's actually very, very good to know whenever you're playing against the fianchetto in these closed positions for the Sicilian. So, all right, g6, bishop c4, d3, e6. I think this was all fine. D6 here, and again, yeah, I probably should have like not worried too much about like rook b8 stuff. I ended up playing a6, which I think is fine. Castles, and then yeah, a6. It also says knight ge7 is good, is maybe actually preferred because it's developing, right? And since g3 wasn't played, it's unlikely. Maybe, well, like f4, f5 probably should be played anyways here. But there is an alternative of d4, since their pieces are actually not horribly placed either. Anyways, yeah, so even though it wastes time, maybe d4 is actually their best bet, and that's actually what the computer says. So, yeah, we just developed naturally, though. We got a really good position. We won this pawn. After rook b1, funnily enough, taking on a3 is not even in the top 3 moves. It says bishop g7, bishop h8, and bishop f6. It doesn't actually want to take a3. And so I'm happy that my assessment here was correct, that they just get a lot of compensation on these dark squares. And the best move here is actually just to give up the exchange, which kind of tells you something that, you know, these dark squares could be potentially very weak. Like, you can imagine if the queen got to c3 this move, it would be game over, because the bishop would be hanging and g7 would be hanging. So like if you just like waste time, like rook b8, queen d2, it's already like slightly better for white. And then let's say we waste another move, rook e8, bam, queen c3, and they're winning. So it's actually very easy. Like I think a much more natural move is rook e8 here, where as we can see, white's preferred despite the fact that we're up 2 pawns. So be careful with this compensation stuff. If you play the dragon, and especially with this g6 and e6, you're really weakening the dark squares. So that could really bite you if you're not careful. But here after bishop g7, we cover the dark squares and, well, we're a pawn up and we have a fantastic bishop. We have good pieces and good development, so we should be fine. That's going to cover it for this game. Hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next one. All right, bye-bye.